All right, welcome back to the exciting book of Genesis. Hallelujah. Today we're going to be taking a look at chapter 22, the number of light. All right. Can I get my first reader to read Genesis 22, 1 through 5, please?
And it came to pass after these things that Elohim did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, Behold, here I am. And he said, Take now thy son, thine only son Isaac, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him there for a burnt offering upon one of the mountains which I shall tell thee of. And Abraham rose up early in the morning, and saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him, and Isaac his son, and clave the wood for the burnt offering, and rose up, and went to the place which Elohim had told him. Then on the 3rd day Abraham lifted up his eyes, and saw the place afar off. And Abraham said unto his young men, Abide ye here with the donkey, and I and the lad will go yonder and worship, and come again to you.
Hallelujah. Okay, so here it is. Yah's putting Abraham to the test. And he tells him to go into the land of Moriah. Moriah means seen of Yah, or my teacher is Yah, or chosen of Yah. I really believe it comes from the root speaking to teacher, or Moreh is teacher, and chosen. So my teacher is Yah, chosen of Yah. Now also says for it that he got up in the morning and he went and he got his son and he got a couple men, got his buttocks, and they went off and at some point he told his young men to bide here with the buttocks, and he went on ahead. Let's see what happens next. Verses 6 through 12. My next reader, please.
And Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Isaac his son. And he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. And Isaac spoke unto Abraham his father, and said, My father? And he said, Here I am, my son. And he said, Behold the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham said, My son Elohim will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So they went both of them together. And they came to the place which Elohim had told him of. And Abraham built an altar there, and laid the wood in order, and bound Isaac his son, and laid him upon the altar upon the wood. And Abraham stretched forth his hand, and took his knife to slay his son. And the angel of Yahuwah called unto him out of heaven, and said, Abraham?
Told you something about this lesson, something about this lesson. Yah, could you straighten it out for us, please? Hallelujah.
And he said, Abraham, Abraham. And he said, Here I am. And he said, Lay not thine hand upon the lad, neither do thou anything unto him. For now I know that thou fearest Elohim, seeing thou hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, from me.
Hallelujah. Okay, so Abraham, he took the wood, he took the burnt offering, and he laid it upon Isaac, and Isaac began to wonder what's going on. Isaac said to his father, Abraham, he said, Behold, the fire, the wood, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering? He's starting to get a little suspicious here, But he's told, Abraham tells him, don't worry about it. Elohim will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. He didn't know that Abraham had him in mind. You know, but he figured it out after he got bound to the wood. You know, got bound to the altar, rather, upon the wood. I guess he started figuring something, you know, hey, wait a minute, you know, something's going on here. But, you know, as an obedient son, you know, he got up there one way or another, you know. So let's see what else happens. Verses 13 through 18, please. My next reading.
And Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering in the stead of his son. And Abraham called the name of this place Jehovah-Yireh, as it is said to this day, in the mount of Yahuwah it shall be seen. And the angel of Yahuwah called unto Abraham out of heaven the second time, and said, By myself have I sworn, saith Yahuwah, for because thou hast done this thing, and hast not withheld thy son, thine only son, that in blessing I will bless thee, and in multiplying I will multiply thy seed as the stars of heaven, and as the sand which is upon the seashore, and thy seed shall possess the gate of his enemies. And in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. Okay, so, you know, Abraham lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a ram was caught in the thicket by his horns. And Abraham went and he took the ram and offered up the offered the ram up for a burnt offering instead of his son. Hallelujah for that, right? You know, and Yahuwah called the place Yahuwah-Yireh. And in all the songs that we sing, Yahuwah-Yireh is Yah, my provider. But it literally means Yahuwah sees. So it speaks to Yahuwah seeing your situation or circumstance and giving you what you need in the time of need. Amen? You know, so that's how it comes over as Yahuwah-Yireh, because he sees what's happening. He's going to do whatever's needed. You know, now it says that, you know, in verse 18, oh, I like verse 16 too, you know, because Yah is El Elyon, that is the Most High El. You know, in verse 16, we see him swearing by himself, because he can't get no higher. Hallelujah. You know, so he swears by himself, you know, that because he's done that, you know, that he's going to bless him. You know, and in verse 18, you know, this is a very important verse, you know, for that gets overlooked oftentimes, you know, especially with all these new theologies be popping up all over the place, you know. But this is essential to understand that this was the promise to Abraham even from the beginning. You know, it's given here, but it's also given in the beginning when y'all first start dealing with Abraham. It says, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because thou hast obeyed my voice. And of course, that seed that's spoken of is Mashiach, is Messiah. You know, and Galatians 3:16 teaches us that. Not seeds as in many, but seed as in one, which is the Messiah. You know, now, what I want you to get, though, is that in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Not just Israel, not just the nations of Israel, if you view it in that aspect, you know, but all nations of the earth shall be blessed. And so it is, you know, so I wanted to point that out. Now, knowing that the early New Covenant believers are Yitzhak, and we're going to give you a scripture to back that up. You know, it's Galatians 4:28. You know, this gives us the lenses needed to see that the trine of Abraham prefigured the trine of Yahushua. You know, now, I used to look at this passage and I used to think that Yitzhak was the type of Yahshua being sacrificed. You know, but I don't see that anymore. You know, because in the scheme of things, Yahushua, Abraham is a type of Yahushua, and Yahushua is typified by Abraham in the story. you know, and not Yitzhak. You know, so Yitzhak is actually typifies the children of, or the son of Yahushua, i.e. his ecclesia, you know, in all actuality. And I'm going to try to show that to you today, too. You know, now, it says, what did I have down here? It said, knowing that the early New Covenant believers are Yitzhak, gives us the lenses needed to see that the trine of Abraham prefigured the trine of Yahushua, who will later offer up his Yitzhak, that is, his New Covenant believers, as a burnt offering. Now, when we look and we see that after the Messiah, you know, they start persecuting his followers, those that believed in him, those whom he fathered. You know, as we see Apostle Paul speak about Timothy and Titus, and he says, you know, these are my sons. You know, they weren't his sons biologically, they were his sons theologically, you know, through the faith. You know, in like manner, you know, the Messiah is our Father. You know, and this is why when it speaks of him, in Yeshayahu, it says, and they shall call him Everlasting Father. You know, as well. You know, so this is important, you know, otherwise you get things crossed and you get to thinking like I was, that, you know, Yahshua is supposed to represent Isaac here. He's not. You know, Yahshua is represented by Abraham, the father of many nations, just like the Messiah would be the father of many nations. And this is what this prophecy in 22:18 is speaking about. And in thy seed, all nations of the earth shall be blessed. Okay, so let us consider the symbolism involved within this spiritual sacrifice. You know, so first let us consider the components involved with Yitzhak's sacrifice. In Genesis 22:1-2, we read, it said that, and it came to pass after these things that Elohim did tempt Abraham, and said unto him, Abraham, and he said, behold, here I am. And he said, take now my son, thine only son, take now thy son, thine only son, Yitzhak, whom thou lovest, and get thee into the land of Moriah, and offer him therefore a burnt offering upon one of the mountains, which I will tell thee of. Now remember, Moriah meant teacher of Yah, or Yah teaches, or and chosen of Yah, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so first of all, let's deal with Isaac. Take now thy son, thine only son, Yitzhak, or Isaac. Now, Galatians 4:28 let us know the spiritual significance of Isaac. It says, now we, brethren, as Yitzhak was, are the children of promise. So that's letting us know that who Yitzhak is. It's the early Christians, the believers, the early believers, you know, of Messiah. They are as Yitzhak, the promised child. Amen. Now, 2 Chronicles 6:5-6 teaches us about Moriah. Remember, Moriah means chosen of Yah. It says in 2 Chronicles 6:5, since the day that I brought forth my people out of the land of Mizraim, I chose no city among all the tribes of Israel to build an house in, that my name might be there. Neither chose I any man to be a ruler over my people, Israel. But I have chosen Jerusalem, that my name might be there. And I have chosen David to be over my people, Israel. And we know Yahshua is the son of David, who was chosen to be over Yah's people. And Jerusalem is the chosen place. So, knowing that Yahshua is represented by Abraham, when it says that it came to pass that Elohim did tempt Abraham, did tempt Yahshua, and said unto him, behold, he said, here I am. He said, take now thy son. He was going to take those believers, those early Christians, Christian believers that was following him. And he says, and get thee into the land of Moriah, the land in which he chose, which we know to be Jerusalem. Amen. You know, and offer him. And that's what's going to happen. Let's take a look at Genesis 22:6. It says, and Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it upon Yitzhak his son, and he took the fire in his hand and a knife, and they went both of them together. So he took the wood of the burnt offering. So let's take a look at the spiritual significance of the wood of the burnt offering. Let me have my next reader read Matthew 3:7-10, please.
But when he saw many of the Pharisees and Sadducees come to his baptism, he said to them, O generation of vipers, who has warned you to flee from the wrath to come? Bring forth therefore fruits, meet for repentance. And think not to say within yourselves, we have Abraham to our father. For I say to you that Elohim is able of these stones to raise up children unto Abraham. And now also the axe is laid unto the root of the trees. Therefore every tree which brings forth not good fruit is hewn down and cast into the fire.
Hallelujah. Okay, so I pray that you can see the wood for the burnt offering. You know, here it is. The passage is telling us about what Yochanan the Immerser was saying. He says, you know, now is the axe laid to the root of the trees. You know, the trees that don't bring forth good fruit, they are the trees that are utilized to be cast into the fire. You know, actually Yah was commanded that they should not tear down, they should not cut down any fruit-bearing trees, period. That was part of Torah, right? So they were not to mess with any fruit-bearing trees. So the ones that's be torn down are the ones that don't bring forth fruit. And here it is, we see Yochanan speaking to the Pharisees and Sadducees are those trees that don't bring forth fruit or good fruit. Amen? Now these are the ones that's destined to be cast into the fire. So now we have our wood for the burnt offering. Everybody with me? Yeah. All right, now verse 6 also says, they took the wood and they laid it upon Yitzhak, his son. Right? So let's see the spiritual significance of the wood being laid upon Yitzhak, his son. You know, says, I think I missed something somewhere. We'll get back to that. All right. So we're going to go to, he took fire. He took the fire in his hand. Okay, so what is the fire? The spiritual significance of the fire is Yah himself. Hebrews 12:29. For our Elohim is a consuming fire. Amen? So that's the spiritual significance of the fire. It's Yah. All right, so we have the wood, which are the Sadducees and the Pharisees. And we have the fire, which is Yah. All right? Now, and we have Yitzhak, which is represented by early believers, right? Okay, so now Genesis 22:6 also said that he had a knife in his hand. And they went both of them together. Okay, so I'm going to try to show the knife. The word knife is ma'akeleth, yes, something like that. Mahakeleth. Mahakeleth. Okay, we'll roll with that. Mahakeleth. Number 3979 from Akal, number 398, meaning something to eat with, i.e. a knife. Okay, so we see Mahakeleth is associated with something to eat with, a knife. All right, what do you do with a knife? You cut stuff, right? Keep that in mind. All right, so Acts 6:8-10 speaks of Stephen. It says, and Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people. Then there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines, the Cyrenians, the Alexandrians, and of them of the Cilicia and Asia, disputing with Stephen. And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the ruach by which he spake. Okay, so, and then it says, and if we jump down to Acts 7:54, it says, and when they heard these things, they were cut to the heart. And they gnashed on him with their teeth. So can you see something to eat in this? Can you see some cutting going on with a knife? Amen? Now, verses 7 and 8 of Genesis 22. Now, at the end of 7, it says, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering? Now, that lamb is actually Stephen. You know, that's who it's going to be. I think I'm getting ahead of myself, though. But it says, in the beginning of verse 8, it says, and Abraham said to my son, Elohim will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering. So that they went, both of them together. And I just want to encourage you and just let you know so that you don't think something strange is going on, that Yah is still providing those rams, you know, for burnt offerings. You know, Romans 8:33 through 37 speaks to these type of rams. It says, who shall lay anything to the charge of Elohim's elect? Hello, ram. It is Elohim that justifieth. Who is he that condemneth? It is Mashiach that died, yea, rather that is risen again, who is even at the right hand of Elohim, who also maketh intercession for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Mashiach? Shall tribulation, or distress, or persecution, or famine, or nakedness, or peril, or sword, as it is written, for thy sake we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. Nay, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. You know, so even if you are called to be one of these elect, if you're called to be one of these rams, if you are called to be one of these that live their lives as a living sacrifice unto Elohim, then no matter what happened, whether it be tribulation, distress, persecution, famine, nakedness, peril, or sword, that nothing shall separate you from the love of Yah, and that in all those things, you're still more than a conqueror. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. All right, now, Genesis 22:13 said that Abraham lifted up his eyes and he looked, and behold, behind him, caught in a thicket. He said, behold, behind him a ram caught in a thicket. Now, the ram, as I was speaking of, is Stephen. You know, now a thicket. What is a thicket? A thicket, the word in the Greek is sabak, number 5442. It speaks to a copse. A copse is a small group of trees. Amen? All right, so now, what is the spiritual significance of trees? Mark 8:23 and 24, you know, gives us a second witness. We already, you know, used John and Mercer's, Yochanan and Mercer's statement, but let's get a second witness from Mark 8:23 and 24. It says, and he took the blind man by the hand and led him out of the town, and when he had spit on his eyes and put his hands upon him, he asked him if he saw aught, and he looked up and he said, I see men as trees walking. See, I want you to know and understand that the spiritual significance, you know, of that wood, you know, the spiritual significance of that wood is the Pharisees and the Sadducees and wood come from trees, right? And men are as trees, and spiritually speaking. So that's makes up that wood. You know, now it says that the ram was caught in a thicket. Let's take a look at that thicket. Let me have my next reader read Acts 6:11 through 14, please.
Then they suborned men, which said, we have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moshe and against Elohim. And they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes, and came unto him, and caught him, and brought him to the council, and set off false witnesses, and said, this man ceased not to speak blasphemous words against this holy place and the law. For we have heard him say that Yahushua of Nazareth shall destroy this place and take charge, and shall change the customs which Moses delivered us.
Hallelujah. Okay, so we can see the thicket. We can see this small group of men in which Stephen has gotten himself caught up in, right? The Alexandrians, the Cyrenians, all those other ends, you know. But we see that this group of men that he has got caught up in, amen. You know, and now here it is. It says that they suborned men, which said, we have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moshe and against Elohim. So what they're holding them to, what's holding them is the blasphemous words, what they perceive as blasphemous words against Moshe, right? You know, and so this is the reason that they're utilizing is these blasphemous words. Keep that in mind, you know, because it says that he was caught in a thicket. So we see a group of men that the thicket's spiritual significance is a small group of trees or a small group of men. We see that he's within a small group of men, but it also says that he's held by his horns. You know, now, when we look at by his horns and we consider the spiritual significance of horns, we find something astounding that speaks to the story. In 1 Samuel 2:1 it says, and Hannah prayed and said, my heart rejoiceth in Yahuwah, my horn is exalted in Yahuwah. And then she pretty much says the same thing in another way. She says, my mouth is enlarged over mine enemies because I rejoice in thy salvation, thereby showing us that the horn is similar to the mouth. Now, when you consider that, can you see that Stephen is caught up by the horns, by his mouth, the blasphemous words that they perceived that was against Moshe and against Elohim? Can you see that? You know, he is caught in the thicket, this group of men, by his horns. Ezekiel 29:21 is a second witness to the horns speaking to the mouth. It says, in that day I will cause the horn of the house of Israel to bud forth, and I will give thee the opening of the mouth in the midst of them, and they shall know that I am Yahuwah. So can you see Stephen literally caught in the thicket by the horns? Now, hereby, we learn that horns spiritually speaking typify to our mouths. And in the story, of Stephen, it's clear that he truly did get caught in the thicket. That is a small group of men by his words. And if that isn't enough to convince you, let us consider what Stephen's name means. His name means chaplet or crown, which is an ornament upon the head, just like the horns is an ornament upon the head of a ram. Amen? Yeah. All right, so Genesis 22:13 said, and Abraham went and took the ram and offered him up for a burnt offering. You know, and verse 14 said, and the name of that place was Yahuwah Yireh, as it is said today, to this day, in the mount of Yahuwah it shall be seen. Now, Yahuwah Yireh again means Yahuwah sees. Amen? So let's take a look at our sacrifice, Stephen, our sacrifice, and see if Yahuwah Yireh. It says in verses 55 through 60 of Acts 7, it says, but he, speaking of Stephen, being full of Ruach Kadesh, looked up steadfastly into heaven and saw the glory of Elohim and Yahushua standing on the right hand of Elohim. And said, behold, I see the heavens opened, and the Son of Man standing on the right hand of Elohim. And they cried out with a loud voice and stopped their ears and ran upon him with one accord. And they cast him out of the city and stoned him. And the witness laid down their clothes at the young man's feet, whose name was Saul. And they stoned Stephen, calling on Elohim and saying, Adonai Yahushua, receive my ruach. And he kneeled down and he cried with a loud voice, Adonai, lay not this sin to their charge. And when he had said this, he fell asleep. You know, it said that, and Abraham looked behind him and saw a ram caught in the thicket. When Yahushua looked behind him, who was coming behind him? It was Stephen. And he was caught in a thicket. He had his horns caught in a thicket in a group of men. And those group of men was as wood. And they bound themselves to him. And the fire of Elohim began to consume that wood, and that wood began to heat that flesh. And that flesh perished because of the heat from the wood. You know, so I want you to be able to see this spiritual picture because, you know, it speaks to each and every one of us who are called to be as Stephen, who are to be those rams, who are to be the sons of Elohim, who are to be the sons of Yahshua. You know, this is what we have to look forward to. You know, now, just to finish off Genesis 22, let me have my next reader read verses 19 through 24, please.
So Abraham returned unto his young men, and they rose up and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham dwelt at Beersheba. And it came to pass after these things that it was told to Abraham, behold, Milcah, she hath also borne children unto thy brother Nahor, who's his firstborn, who's his brother, and Kemuel, the father of Aram, and Chesed, and Hazo, and Pildash, and Jedlab, and Bethuel, and Bethuel begat Rebekah. These 8 Milcah did bear to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and his concubine, whose name was Remuah. She bare also Tavah, and Gaham, and Mahash, and Mahakah.
Hallelujah. All right, so we're going to take a look at the meaning of these names. Milcah speaks to a queen, Nahor, snoring or snorting, whose counselor, booze, disrespect or contempt. Kemuel, raised of Elohim. Amram, exalted or high. Kesed, increase. Hazo, or Hazo, vision or seer. Pildash, flame or fire. Yidlaf, weeping or tearful. Bethuel, destroyed of El. Rebekah, fettered or ensnared. Rumah, raised or elevated. Teba, massacre or slaughter. Gaham, to burn. Dakash, seal or skin. Ma'akah, oppression. You know, so I pray that today that you've learned what the true sacrifice of Elohim that Yahshua has bound unto the wood is. You know, and you know, I pray that you can see, you know, that our lives are supposed to be a living sacrifice. You know, because we're supposed to pick up our torture stakes and follow Yahshua. You know, and when he picked up his torture stake, he wasn't going to have a party. He wasn't going to have a good time. He was going to be tortured unto the death. He was, what was they torturing? They was torturing his flesh. You know, and, you know, even though they killed his flesh, he raised it back up again. You know, and likewise with us, even though they kill our flesh, just be encouraged that that's all they can do. But Yah is able to raise us up again, even in spite of. That's all I have for you today. Pray it was a blessing.